Well, hello again, my friends. Yes, hello once again, friends and fans. Raptor here, and welcome back to Deck Spec, where we're talking infantry today. I also realized in a very previous episode I said I was going to elaborate on ATGMs, probably in the first edition, to kind of explain exactly what they do and what they don't do, and we'll take care of that as we talk about the American forces here as the infantry. Again, this is to help you not to create a deck so far yet, but to help you understand exactly what each thing in Wargame AirLand Battle does and how to use it effectively, and also to kind of understand its costs, benefits, and disadvantages on the battlefield. So here we have the American ATGM Dragon 2 group. As you can see, it's a 10-point infantry group that has a Dragon 2, an ATGM or an anti-tank guided missile, and the M16A1, which is an infantry weapon, which is basically it's a battle rifle for the American forces. You can again see all those things about it, like for instance that this is a Scalos missile, which I'm not exactly sure what the acronym means, but if anyone wants to say down below, there's tons of smart people who watch these videos who know a lot about the military. So if you're in the military, hats off to you no matter where you're from, and also feel free to share that information. So we're going to go over all of the infantry here, and there's going to be a lot to go over, so let's get started. Let's first start not with the ATGM Dragon group, but let's actually start with the riflemen for the United States. So this is as basic as it gets, everyone. A 10-point U.S. infantry group is about as simple as it gets. Right there for 10 points plus 1 for the M35, 11 points. Here's what you get. You get an M16A1, an M72, which is a 66mm rocket, which is basically like a medium anti-tank weapon, and also an M60, which is STAT, which means it's stationary and it can't be fired on the move, which means that only the riflemen are only effective at their, well, at least they're at their peak effectiveness when they're stationary. So keep that in mind. They're a very good defensive unit, and as you can see down here, you can look at all the types and everything. But what I do want to go over with you is just pretty much all of the standard infantry. Not too much into detail, but just what each one of the infantry groups does. And keep in mind, the Brits and the French and Germans and everyone else pretty much has a basic rifleman group as well. That is pretty much a rifle, a medium rather an AT weapon. I was going to say ATGM, but a medium AT weapon, and then a machine gun. And it does vary whether or not they're stationary or not. And usually if it's CQC, aka close quarter combat, then they're a little bit more expensive and a little bit more experienced. All right, so there's the riflemen. It's also important to note that the American riflemen also come in different transports. In fact, some of the most diverse transports available in Wargame AirLand Battle. You get the M35, which makes them dirt cheap for defending. You get the M998 Humvee, which makes them an extremely good land grab unit. You could basically zoom up to a factory in the middle of the map, unload a bunch of these boys, and guess who controls the town? Could be you. The choice is yours. You get the M113A1, which is basically like it's kind of a cross between Humvee meets armor. So it's a little slower, and as you can see, the fuel capacity there, it's poor optics and poor stealth. It can do a high speed on the road and pretty good speed on the ground, and it also has an M2 Browning machine gun on it. But really, this is only going to help you maybe land against other infantry groups. This could be taken out by an ATGM or a AT weapon very easily, or really even not 50 caliber, but autocannon shells very easily. So use these when you're just trying to unload close to enemy infantry. And here we have the same thing, except this is the Dragon version, which has a Dragon ATGM launcher right on top of it. We'll try to zoom in on that to show you there. You can kind of see the shield next to that thing, and we can move it around. That's another cool thing about these units too. You can move them, and they will move around, but really doesn't serve any purpose other than just to show you that they're infantry, and it's another cool little extra thing that you can do in Wargame AirLand Battle. Next up is the M2 Bradley. The Bradley here, by the way, these infantry groups are always the same. The only thing that varies is the transport, unless you choose a different unit altogether. The Bradley here is a extremely good defensive and even an attacking weapon system. Here you can see it has the tow, and let's actually go over ATGMs now that we're talking about infantry transports. Leptro wants me to play, but I'm going to decline for the moment. But so here's what we're going to talk about is the Bradley autocannon and ATGM, and this is what makes it extremely effective. In fact, I wish I could go into. I should have actually went into the armory mode, but that's all right because I don't know. Anyway, you'll have to look over to the right then as I explain everything. So, ATGMs. You have TOWs, and you have a few different types of ATGMs for NATO. But basically, what a ATGM is, it stands for an anti-tank guided missile. And as you can see there, that one is HEAT in brackets and GUID in brackets, which means that it is a high explosive anti-tank round that is guided, which means that in order to fire this weapon, the Bradley must be stopped and the crew must be calm or worried in order to really hope to hit anything. And its rate of fire is 10 rounds a minute, suppression is 150, accuracy 10, AP power 16. This is very good for pretty much taking out most of what's in the Soviet arsenal, or at least packed. It's not a guaranteed kill unless you're shooting something in the side or behind it, but you could definitely panic the hell out of enemy transports, especially if the enemy's bringing, for instance, like T-55s and transports. Guess who owns the field? The Bushmaster 25mm can rip up those transports, as the SACLOS missile ×4 can take those out. General range for ATGMs also seems to be very high, and also ATGMs can be taken out, or at least disabled, by putting smoke screens in front of ATGM teams and ATGM vehicles. The benefit of the TOW here, though, is that, or at least the Bradley, is it can easily move, so you can fire a few missiles from one position and get out of there before enemy artillery or an airstrike comes in, and that combined with infantry is a formidable force. The infantry can hold a building, and the Bradley can sit right next to that building in a swamp or in a small forest of some sort, or a line of trees. Be undetected, the enemy comes up, the infantry is taken care of by the riflemen, and the Bradley finishes them off. That's all we're going to go into for 8 ATGMs now. We'll get into a little bit more details later, but let's move on to the Hueys. The riflemen also have the capability of coming in via helicopter, and that just basically is a Humvee of the sky. Now keep in mind, it's easy to destroy, and with the newest patch, if men die while they're in a chopper, unless they're Marines or a group over 15 men or more, then they're probably all going to perish in the crash. Also, you get the UH-60 Blackhawk, which again is just more speed, and you get a twin M134 miniguns on that, and that can be very effective against landing your troops and then taking off and taking out light vehicles that may go for your troops. All right, next is light riflemen. Light riflemen are a very interesting group. They have a stationary M240, which is it is similar to the M60, but not the same weapon at all. It's just different, but it does need to be stationary in order to fire. Again, these troops here have the same options as the American riflemen. The light riflemen, however, have a Dragon, which may be very inaccurate and may have low AP power, but could take out a group of BMPs. So if you want to spend an extra few points and be defended against advancing armor, this could be the unit for you. Alright, so and then they also get up to the Chinook actually as well, which is just high speed with a little bit of armor added to it. The riflemen do not get that, according to this deck anyway. I should have mentioned, by the way, that this is a mixed deck that doesn't exactly give me all access to everything. So just keep in mind some things may be different. And again, the reason why I didn't make a video a lot sooner was there were so many patches removing and adding things and changing vehicles around that I didn't want to be misleading or confusing with those. Up next, we got the big boys. That's right, the Marines. The Marines are a hardened fighting force for both NATO and PACT. They both have access to, here you have the U.S. Marines, but the PACT have access to both Polish and Russian Marines as well. Maybe a few other units in there that have a name that I'm not familiar with that may be Marines as well. But there are other units in NATO who also have a force of Marines. So the Marines are a very hardened fighting force. In fact, instead of getting 10 men, they get 15. As you can see, there's a look at that huge squad there. They get more men, and that means that they get more chances to shoot their M72 and their M60s as well. And they're very accurate, and you can get them hardened or veteraned, and they have more experience, so they're an extremely good force in forests and also defending in cities. Really, the Marines, if you're trying to launch an assault, don't do it just with riflemen. You may want to add some Marines to that. And again, the Marines have options for transport that are a little different, though, than the regular riflemen. Here you have, again, the M35, which all U.S. troops have access to, and the M998 Humvee. But here's where it gets a little different. The LVTP, which I believe is landing vehicle, I can't forget, or I'm sorry, landing something amphibious. I don't remember. But anyway, it does have a machine gun on it, which is really good. And it's an M2 Browning, and it gives you some armor, and it's supposed to be amphibious, but in this game it's not. And it does have 65 miles an hour. So this is basically their, this is basically the M11 3 for the Marine Forces. This is the same version of it, by the way. The LVTP-7A1 is very similar to the standard version that we looked at here, other than its paint job and the fact that it has a 40mm frag grenade launcher on the front of it, and that's 63 rounds a minute. So that can definitely suppress troops, take everybody, stun everybody, while the Marines finish everyone off. And speaking of stunning, you're going to be stunned by this, the LAV-25, which is basically a Bradley that is a cheetah. This is the Cheetah Bradley, that's right. It doesn't have an ATGM, but what it doesn't have for ATGM, it can make up with for a mean cannon. That 25mm cannon is capable of taking out T-55s, T-62s, transports, and everything else. Not to mention it can do 100 kilometers an hour off-road, 150 on-road, and it's got an autonomy of 500 kilometers. Pretty damn good. So with that added force and the Marines, that is a very good, capable land landing force, I guess you could say, for wherever they want to go. But speaking of land, that's where we come to the end of land, and the only thing that's going to be landing is the helicopters here. And look at this. The UH-1E comes with FFAR, fire and forget rockets there, basically, because they're just AoE, area effect rockets that just fire on the ground, and an M134 minigun. Very, very important. 205 kilometers an hour on that. That is a little bit more advanced than the previous helicopter we were looking at, just because it's got side miniguns and rockets. So that makes it a very, very good landing force. A few of these helicopters could come in, stun enemy units, and the Marines could finish them off, just similar to the LAV, except this is more capable of stunning larger units. And even if you had enough of these in your reverses, like for instance, maybe one Tunguska, if done right, you could stun the Tunguska, surround it, kill it, and secure a town. But of course, that's all up to speculation depending on the situation. Now, the Twin Huey. The Twin Huey is more expensive, has less armament, but what it makes up for is, look at how the engine is slightly different there. You have that little puny engine there, but then look at that, oh, beefed up, bro. So it is faster and it is lighter because it doesn't have the heavier weaponry in it, I suppose. You know, not the huge cache of ammo for the grenade launcher. So when you're in need of speed, this is your steed. Haha, write that down. All right, so U.S. Marines also are capable of coming in the Chinook, and I should have mentioned that the previous Chinook also does come with a minigun as well for the light riflemen. So again, there's riflemen, light riflemen, and then the Marines. And now we're going to go back up to just, I do want to go up and cover the ATGM Dragon group, which is a very interesting group. Unlike most ATGM teams, the American groups don't have just 2 members. Here's the ATGM Dragon 2 team. Some ATGM teams are only 5 men, and this is no exception here, except they just seem to be a little different. They're not standard. They're close range, which means you could technically use them as a fighting force if you needed to just finish off a few troops or something like that. They are very good at taking out, they're like riflemen with a reduced squad, and they fire an ATGM, but not an ATGM which like a Conqueror's unit would be. For instance, what I'm trying to say is that these guys are probably better for taking out tanks specifically when they're very close, and infantry, than anything else. Don't expect to take out a T-64. Expect to use the ATGM-2 Dragons, Dragon 2s rather, for taking out enemy transports and very light vehicles at close range. Use them in numbers. Try to put 2 or 3 in a building. Try never to fill up 4 because you're just asking for trouble with bombs. But these troops as well come with a Humvee, which is for speed, an M113A1, which reduces on speed a little bit but has the armor, the Dragon, which you could double down on your ATGMs even, and of course the Bradley, which, boy oh boy, that would be a really good force for taking out. Seriously, look at that. If you were to spend 45 plus 10 points, which is 55, then 55 points could be devastating to an enemy who's just moving fast down the highway. The Dragon troops, of course, also have access to the UH-1H Huey, which only has the M2 Browning, not like the miniguns available to the Marines, and the UH-60A, which does have the minigun and added speed, and I believe also added armor. Its strength is 6, the Huey strength is 5, So yes, the Black Hawk for all transport needs, including special forces, has a little bit more armor. Assault engineers, a very important unit. Yes, yes. Notice they have the M202 flash on their backs. There's that one troop right here. I don't think I can zoom in on him anymore. But they do have a rocket launcher on their back, which is capable of firing napalm. Napalm rounds times 8. These are amazingly effective only in two purposes, at least that I've encountered. In forests, a group like this that's not detected, if they get a shot off with their... I'm actually selecting the dragons right now. I should hover over the engineers. If they fire off their M202 before they're detected by enemy forces, they could completely wipe out an infantry group. I mean, completely. 10 motor Strelicky could be stunned and then fired upon by just this group and could wipe them out. But if you add light riflemen, or if you add riflemen to that group, you're going to have a good time because you're going to just stun and finish off the enemy. The assault engineers, even though it looks like a little flamethrower, do engage at range, 525 meters. And they're very good at also attacking towns as well. If you were to have these guys fire and then kind of run away, reload, and then fire again at a enemy secured neighborhood or something like that, you could definitely flush them out. Available in the M35, the Humvee, the M113A1, the Dragon, the Huey, and the Blackhawk. That's pretty much the typical setup. I would say, personally, probably don't step it up any more than just pretty much the M113A1. If you want to get into a town and start clearing it out, that's probably what. But Dragons and Hueys and Blackhawks, probably not necessary to transport this specialized unit. Speaking of specialized units, up next we have Delta Force. The Delta Force is pretty much the Marines times 2, and you get quite a few less units of them, unfortunately. Delta Force here is capable of having the M72, and in fact, I believe there is supposed to be a group that does have access to the Gustav, but actually I should have mentioned that the Marines don't have access to that. I believe they get that. Maybe they get that if you have a specialized deck, but there is a Carl Gustav launcher which is extremely powerful against enemy units, and I should have kind of maybe picked the American specific deck to engage that, but I guess I don't see that here. But also look for that in there. I keep saying medium AT, medium AT. The Carl Gustav is like a heavy AT launcher. It could take out a T-64 from the side at any time, and that's what Delta Force is good for too. Some of these units that do carry the Carl Gustav, if you get around to the side of tanks that are being repaired or firing on other enemy units, Carl Gustav's the way to go. But with Delta Force, their speed and their Stoner 6.3, the CQC weapon, makes them strong for getting behind enemy lines, taking out transports, taking out artillery, taking out supply lines, and just being a general harassment to the enemy. Because they're special forces, they're a little bit faster. They can move 27 kilometers an hour, as where assault engineers can only move 18. Pretty much everyone else can move 13, 18, a lot slower. 27 kilometers per hour is lightning fast. This allows you to get out of the way of enemy artillery if you keep them on the move, and they also kind of have a little bit of a recon element to them. They're small and they're very good stealth, but they seem to somehow elude enemy forces with their speed. If you have motor Strelicky that have engaged them and they run away, they can slip away from the motor Strelicky, and that's an added level of stealth that not a lot of people think about. They also have the CQC weapon again, so they're good in cities, forests, getting behind enemy lines, crossing bridges, defending crossroads, and they're just basically a force that you definitely don't want behind you. Never really try to use Delta Force in an attack unless you're specifically going around the enemy. They also come in the Humvee, the Huey, and the Blackhawk. The Huey, again, only having the M2, and the Chinook as well, I should have mentioned. All right, let's get down to the final things we have here. And again, this is kind of just going over the basic units. I'm not going to, again, I don't want to go into specific weaponry so much as, like I said with the Carl, but I do want to mention it, though, because I know some of you know it and could clear that up, because I'm a little confused, but I do know they get it, and I do know that it's a very good launcher, but I just want to go over kind of the basic units of, and again, the Red Eye, for instance, here is an AA weapon, and it's not as good as the Stinger, but is a little bit more affordable and more plentiful. So, and the British kind of have that option with the Javelin versus, or I don't think they get yeah, they do get the Javelin. The Javelin versus the Blowpipe. The Blowpipe is just kind of not good at all, as where the Javelin could be good. Well, the Red Eye is good. It's not great. It's just good. And the LAAD is a shoulder-launched team of 2. Really good for taking out groups of choppers. Not really good for anything else other than taking out choppers that are stationary. You could get them close with some. You could get them close with going through the forest and try to take out a recon chopper. And they're also good in numbers. Of course, you can keep them back, and they were made before they're 1975. So you could get them at pretty much any era. Again, available in Humvee, Dragon, everything except for air transports, ironically. Oh, wait, there they are. Yes, they are. The Blackhawks. It removed one option there, a little notch, so it's kind of a little strange there. Stingers are basically the same as Red Eye, just more accurate. They have the same transport options as the Red Eye do, and the Stingers also come in all available transport. So again, to keep in mind here, M35 for any unit is cheap and slow. The Humvee is cheap and fast. The M113A1 is reasonable and slow and armored. The Dragon is reasonable, slow, it has a little bit of armor, and it has an ATGM, which is meh. And then the Bradley, of course, is a real fighter there. It could really hold a line. It could make or break, but don't put all of your eggs in one basket. Also, don't forget about the Huey and the Blackhawk for getting around the enemy. And, of course, the Blackhawk's faster, more armored, and has a minigun. And don't forget about the Marines, who also have access to the specialized UH-1E and the Twin Huey. Again, I used just the standard American deck, by basically just selecting all of NATO and just allowing America, because I know some people are starting to play less specialized decks and are starting to use a little bit of everything they like from all of these. And of course, the game has been out for a while, so for any of those of you who think it's my first day, check out the channel. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. That is the end for Spec Deck for Infantry. Next, we'll go through support, tanks, recon, vehicles, helicopters, and planes. And then, of course, some basic tactics and maybe the tutorial, but I doubt it, because pretty much every time you watch a video, it's a tutorial. And get out there and play. Again, put your questions, comments, and everything else down below. Help me out on some of those questions I had even. And, of course, no one's perfect, but we're all getting better. So until next time, this is Raptor for the rest of the Rat Pack, reminding you to keep the password and pimp hand strong, bring the cornucopia of pain, and until next time, we will see you. Bye.